Hello everyone and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video I want to talk about the January window, kind of wrap it up, go over some background information on it, talk about Sabitzer, how this deal occurred, show some really interesting things in with regards to the progress at Manchester United, and then talk about some of the latest, more sensitive topics that just have to be addressed, where the club is at, without getting into anything else. So let's go right into all of that. So starting with January, the January window was intended to essentially be no signings for Manchester United. That was the way that it was supposed to go. That was the expectation. That's where things were at. And I know this to be pretty much certain. However, the reason for it is, of course, the sale, the money at United. There is no money to spend. But what happened? With the termination of Ronaldo's contract, the first thing that came up that they knew they had to address was to specifically, that was the main objective for January, as I'm told, was to going into the window, was to get a striker for the rest of the season to fill the gap left by Ronaldo. And they got that done pretty early with the signing of Weghorst, which I really like as a deal. It's been done. You know, they haven't had the money to spend on other targets, even though they've been in talks about some of the main signings for summer. That was the main plan in January. With Dubravka being recalled to Newcastle, they had to then sign a short-term goalkeeper in Jack Butland, which they did. And then specifically, when it came to Eriksen's injury, is what led to them moving forward with Sabitzer, which I'll talk about in a second. So, all in all, January was intended to be a nothing. There was nothing intended to happen in this window. Simply, it was supposed to be very quiet simply because there's not the money for the plans that they need, and the players that they want for the long term were not really available for them in January with the money available. So, in some respects, I think that I won't say the club have done well. I will say that the people who are involved in this side of thing have done well. The club as a whole hasn't, because it's limited by the current ongoing situation with the sale and with the Glazers and all of that. But the people involved did well. I mean, going into this window, if you would have thought, okay, Weghorst and Sabitzer coming in, you'd think, hey, that's not bad. That's some help that we needed. And considering the resources available, the time available, and the money available, the people involved have done really well. Really efficient. They've gotten the things in that they needed. And I think that just deserves some praise from them for doing that, because they're essentially working with two hands tied behind their backs financially, but they were able to pull this off out of a messy scene while Erik ten Hag was doing a great job getting the club up and into a good shape and having a good month overall. So I think it deserves a lot of praise. I think they've done really well with what they have, considering the injuries, considering everything that's going on. Now, with regards to Sabitzer, the thing that I can say is this was a very, very recent move. They looked into a move for Ryan Gravenberch, so I've heard, but he wasn't available. And then Sabitzer became available. Now, Marcel Sabazar has been on United's radar for some time. In April 22nd, 2022, I put some information in the Discord that he would be on the list for a second midfield signing for the 8. Eriksen ended up being the main signing, so he would have been on the list, same with Eriksen. So it's a natural conclusion that with Eriksen out, he's a player that they brought in. It makes a lot of sense. He's a good fit. I can't say I know a ton about him, but I did get some interesting perspective from the United point of view on why they signed Sabitzer and how they view Sabitzer, which is somewhat interesting. They expect that he's got a really great attitude. He's a leader. He was the club captain at Leipzig. That's important, the attitude. He was very interested in coming to United right off the bat. Very energetic player. He's basically, the way that they see him, as a versatile midfielder of high quality who is capable of playing in different roles, but is especially used in an attacking midfielder role. And they found and essentially decided that he was the best short-term attacking midfielder player that they could get on a short-term loan, the best option. And it was purely down to the fact of they only received the Eriksen diagnosis around Monday morning and decided to go all in. Now, they were already making contacts and looking around just in case, but as soon as they got that information, they went for it right away. and got it done very quickly. And he's even registered registered if he's in the squad, we'll see. But he's registered and able to be in the squad at the weekend. So they've again moved very well, gotten a quality player. There's some debate. I've heard that they likely did want a short-term an option, but the time required to work out the details of that kind of deal, there just wasn't the time for it on deadline day, so they didn't get it. But I would definitely view Sabitzer as an audition to some degree. Now, that being said, where is he going to play? I think you're going to find he's cover for all three players and will rotate in there at the moment. That's the way that they view him. I think they want to give a little bit of rest to Bruno at times, as well as Fred, as well as Casemiro. So I think the four of them you're going to see sharing a lot of time in there. He's another good, fit, energetic player who can do it. So a smart signing, a sensible signing, one that I think works really, really well with how the United want to play, that adds some quality. He's closer to Fred than Eriksen, in my opinion, in terms of the energy, in terms of the pressing, in terms of the work rate, in terms of off-ball movement and all that. And I think that gives you a little bit of an indication of the type of player that they want for potentially future signings. And I'm kind of getting into the midfield plans on this, but that's what I'm talking about. That's where I think it's important to look at. So I was given some information regarding the midfield plans. Striker and goalkeeper remain the highlights in terms of the main area of focus for summer. In the midfield, however, as I understand it, they do want a signing there, potentially two. And as I said, there was some talk about Sabitzer getting an option, but there wasn't the time for it, and that might have been why there was some debate in the media. But if you look at the ideal plan, as I understand it, it might be to move on a Scott McTominay and a Donny van de Beek, bring in Sabitzer and another midfielder. The other midfielder, as I understand it, is, in terms of priorities, Frenkie de Jong, Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, in that order. I think that it's unlikely that Frenkie de Jong or Jude Bellingham will be joining. There's already been news about that. So that's kind of the plans for the midfield. In an ideal world, should the money be there after taking care of striker and goalkeeper, that potentially bringing two in, moving two out, having a really strong, midfield contingent. And that's something that is possible, and Sabitzer could be doing a bit of an audition for that kind of role at the moment, and then we'll see what happens moving forward as it comes down to the other areas. Frenkie de Jong is still saying that he wants to stay at Barcelona. There's even news from them today making it very clear he's not leaving. Jude Bellingham, as far as I've heard, is still off to City or Madrid. Declan Rice is an interesting one with Arsenal. Maybe they're interested in him and Caicedo, with Chelsea moving forward with Enzo Fernandez. Declan Rice has obviously been of interest to the club for some time. He'd be a lot cheaper this summer than in previous years. Still an interesting option. Very good quality on ball, a very good ball carrier, maybe the best in England in terms of his progressions through the midfield and security on ball. Great ball winner, off ball as well. A lot of movement, a lot of energy. Obviously not the passing range and creativity, but it kind of depends what Erik ten Hag wants. The other positive is he could deputize and take over Casemiro as the 6 in the future. So there's a lot to think about with that as we get closer to summer. I hope they come up with some more creative names too, but those three have kind of eternally been on United's list and what they look at. So that's kind of the midfield plans. I would see that you could see essentially a Bruno, Casemiro, Fred, Eriksen +2. Maybe it's Sabitzer and Rice, or if ideally Sabitzer and de Jong as the 6 midfield players that allow for real rotation and play across the all 4 competitions. So just thinking with that, that's kind of an early note as to the direction that United might be leaning and looking at come summer, come the sale of the club. Now, I want to move on to the next thing, because this is a really interesting. I did this at the beginning of the year, week 6, week 3, showing where United were at, and incredible some of the progress that has been made. I want to show this. This is really cool. So this is on the left here, when you watch, I believe it'll be on the left, will be the United's league rank in some key statistics: passes per defensive action, possession won, progressive actions, passing percentage, decisive passes, expected threat generated, long balls completed, successful box entries, recoveries in opposition half, defensive actions in final third, and final third entries. This was basically on the left pre-Casemiro. So some of the things I'd like to highlight here: recoveries in opposition half, defensive actions in final third, incisive, expected threat. One thing, United were not pressing at all. They were not capable of pressing. They were not able to do any kind of pressing of any measure at all. And you can see it's all pretty mid to low. Very, very much a struggle. When you look at the team shape, you can see it's a bit messy, and that's average team position, so it's always going to be a little messy. But it's very narrow. Very, very, very narrow. A lot of things clumped up in the middle. McTominay obviously was doing that deep role. Very, very clumped. Not really what you want to see. Not very balanced. Left back not getting as far forward as the right back. A lot of things there that are not necessarily working. Now, let's look at now, since Casemiro has arrived. World of difference here if you look at that chart on the left. Recoveries in opposition half, defensive actions, final thirds. You can see these things have massively improved. Final third entries, possessions won, incisive passes completed. Everything has vastly improved. Now, where United still need to improve a bit more is threat. They need to cause a little bit more damage to teams, but that's really where we're looking at, improving the wing play and the striker and all of that, where we've seen, with the substitutes that came on. And how awesome was that, seeing the substitutes come on, those three, Rashford, Sancho, and Martial, that front three from preseason, come on in the game and just change it entirely. You can see how much more dangerous we were. But that is the thing that needs the most work. Now, if you look at the shape, it's much, much better. Now, remember, these are average positions. So with the way that we defend, Eriksen dropping deep, in those instances, Fernandes, Bruno is moving across the front. So it doesn't necessarily mean he's out of position. But I have Dalot and Wan-Bissaka. You can see they basically play on top of each other, which is good. It means that since Wan-Bissaka's come in, he's doing exactly what Dalot has been doing in terms of positioning. That's good to see. Shaw, being in the team, plays a bit more advanced. Casemiro plays right in the middle. So it's really good seeing this. And then you can see with Antony, one of the things he obviously brings is holding the width on the right. The shape is much better. It's not perfect. And the biggest thing is that striker position. The striker position is still leaning to the left. I don't have Weghorst, so it's a little complicated to show this. Martial, when he was playing, was on the left a bit too much. Weghorst is probably playing a bit more down the middle, and that would allow Fernandes to be a little more to the right. But that would be the only thing, essentially, that I would say with this in terms of shape that needs immediate improvement is the striker play. And we'll see how that happens. But huge, huge improvements. Overall, everything dramatically different since Casemiro's come into the team. Unlocked the ability for a press to come into play. Shape better. It's kind of an incredible progress. So it's really impressive to see that. As a whole, and I just wanted to show this because it's cool, and you would hope United can keep up this and end up, in the top 4 position on the table. Ending up in the top in terms of league rank in most of these statistics is probably the underlying numbers that are going to indicate whether United are closer to the top or not. These are all statistics where Arsenal are essentially in first or second in practically everything with Man City. And then the final thing here, I wanted to show this. This is rather impressive, though. I don't have this for the League Cup. I wish I did, or FA Cup, because I bet it would be similar. But this is the Europa League among all teams. Same statistics. United were probably the best performing Europa League team. And obviously that horrible handball call in the first game is the reason why they have to play that extra round. But practically first or second in most everything important: progressive actions, incisive passes, expected threat generated, box entries, final third entries. Really good. I mean, really impressive. The pressing stats and possession ones are lower because they had so much possession that they weren't winning so many of them in the pressing. So that's really interesting to see and awesome to see as well. So, I mean, that's just incredibly impressive what Eric's done in the Europa League, and I would not write us off against Barcelona. So just some progress I wanted to show that I thought would be rather interesting. Someone asked me for it, and I had been thinking about doing it and presenting it and kind of showing it shortly, how the progress had been made. It's been a while, so I wanted to address that. Now, moving on to a final note, which is a somewhat uncomfortable topic. Obviously, you have news that came out today from Manchester court system and all that, Crown Prosecution Service, that the charges against Mason Greenwood had been dropped entirely. They're no longer pursuing them due to reasons I'm not going to get into. And then, so of course, Manchester United put out a statement, which is as follows. Manchester United notes the decision of the Crown Prosecution Service that all charges against Mason Greenwood have been dropped. The club will now conduct its own process before determining next steps. Will not make any further comment until that process is complete. I'm not going to get into discussing any aspect of whether right or wrong, what should happen, what shouldn't, or the details of the situation. I just want to give the information on this. In terms of what's going on with the club, they did not want to get into any of this until the prosecution and the legal aspect of it was done, because they didn't want to influence it, prejudice it, interfere, or anything like that. They're moving forward with an internal investigation to figure out and get a better understanding of what happened and why the allegations were made and how and what the basis is for them. They're immediately getting into it, and based on what they find, that's what they're going to do next. And they do not have a timeline for this. We'll see. So there's nothing more that can be known about this at the moment, but it is worth mentioning just as a note of news. And I would recommend for everybody just to wait and see what happens now. So that's what I've got here. Hopefully you found this information interesting and informative with regards to everything, with regards to January, Sabitzer, the midfield plans, and where things are lining up. I think the next few weeks will be really interesting. There's some big games. Obviously, at the weekend, we need to kick back up on the league form. And then we have a cup final at Wembley at the end of February. In the next month, this month, we could figure out if there are new owners for Manchester United and who they are, and have a cup final at Wembley. So times may be changing for United, and we'd all love to see that, okay? Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. And as a note, please do not put into the comments a lot of stuff about the Mason Greenwood situation. I will not respond to it. I will not get into it. I can't. And I would just recommend not getting into too much about it. I cannot say anything more about it. I don't know anything more that I can say about it. So leave it at that, please. Thank you. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.